Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to master two tiny little keywords in Python that have a huge impact on how your loops work. We're talking about break and continue. Let's dive in and see how these can make your code way smarter and a lot more efficient.
So, have you ever been in this situation? You write a loop, it's chugging along through a bunch of items, but then maybe you find the exact thing you were looking for, or maybe you hit some piece of data you just need to ignore. You don't always want the loop to just blindly run to the very end, right? Well, that's exactly where these tools come into play.
Okay, so let's kick things off with our first tool. This is the break statement. And honestly, the best way to think about it is like your loop's emergency stop button. It does, well, exactly what you think it does.
Yeah, seriously. Picture a big red stop button. The second your code hits that break statement, the loop is just over, done, finito. The program doesn't even hesitate. It just jumps straight to the very next line of code after the loop, even if there were 1,000 more items left to go through.
And the syntax for this, it's super simple. You almost always stick the break inside an if statement. So you're basically saying, hey, check for this condition, and if it's true, trigger the break and get me out of here.
Okay, let's see this thing in action, because that's the best way to learn it. So imagine we're sifting through this list of numbers. Our mission, find the very first number that is both divisible by 3 and bigger than 10. The key here is first. As soon as we find it, our job is done. Searching any more would just be a total waste of processing power.
And check out the output. It shows the power of break perfectly. The loop goes through 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, nope. But then it gets to 12, and bingo. 12 is divisible by 3, and it is greater than 10. So the code prints, found it, 12. Hits that break statement, and the loop just stops dead in its tracks. And this is the crucial part. The number 15, it never even got looked at. Now that is efficiency.
All right, so that's the stop button. Now let's talk about our second tool. If break is the emergency stop, then continue is the skip button. Now this is the really important difference. Continue doesn't kill the whole loop. Not at all. It just ends the current turn, the current iteration. It's like telling Python, hey, we're done with this specific item. Just skip whatever else you were going to do with it and jump right to the start of the next one.
And if you look at the syntax, you'll see it's almost identical to break. You usually stick it inside an if statement just the same. But you have to remember the result is completely different. Continue doesn't stop the party. It just tells one person to step outside for a minute while the party keeps going.
Here is a classic textbook example of where you'd use this. Our goal is super simple. We just want to print the odd numbers from 1 to 9. So we set up a loop to go through all the numbers, but we put a test inside. And the test is, hey, is this number even? If it is, we just say continue.
And bam, look at that, a perfect list of odd numbers. So what happened here? Well, every time the loop saw an even number, like 2, that if condition was true. It triggered continue, which meant the print statement right after it got completely skipped. The loop just immediately jumped to the next number, which was 3, and did the whole thing over again.
Okay, so now you've got both of these tools in your toolkit. Let's put them head to head and talk about some of the finer points, the stuff that gets really important when your code starts to get a little more complex.
This table just lays it all out so clearly, right? It really just boils down to one simple question. Do you need to get out of the loop completely? If so, you use break. Or do you just need to skip this one thing and keep going? Well, then you use continue. It's all about picking the right tool for the right job. That's what makes for really clean, easy-to-read code.
But this brings up a really, really important question. And honestly, this is something that trips up a lot of people. What happens when you have a loop inside another loop? Nested loops. Which loop does break or continue actually affect?
So, take a close look at this code. We've got an outer loop using the variable I and an inner loop using j. And right there, inside the inner loop, there's a break. So the question is, when j equals 1 and that break gets triggered, what happens? Does it stop the whole shebang or just that inner j loop?
And the output tells us everything we need to know. The inner loop prints 0, 0, but the second j becomes 1, that break hits, and it kills the inner loop only. Look at that. The outer loop doesn't care at all. It just moves on to the next value of I and starts that inner loop all over again. This is the golden rule. You have to burn this into your brain. Break and continue only ever affect the innermost loop they're sitting inside of.
Okay, so let's wrap this all up with a few pro tips to keep your code clean and running smoothly. First, use break when you're searching for something. It's a great way to make your code faster by exiting early.
Second, use continue when you need to filter out bad data or just skip over things you don't care about. It really simplifies your logic. And here's a big one, a real gotcha. Be super careful with while loops. If you use continue before you update your counter variable, you can easily and accidentally create an infinite loop, and nobody wants that.
And there you have it. That's break and continue. You're now armed with two really simple but incredibly powerful statements to give you precise control over your loops. So the next time you're writing a loop, just pause for a second and ask yourself, do I need the stop button or do I need the skip button? Now go write some awesome code.